artists into freshly squeezed.
And there's been, a fair share of arguments. But it's a difficult thing to be in a room together for so many years and not fall out.
In the words of Mr. Arthur Conley, do you like good music? Sorry, I won't do that again, but if you do and your preference is for the indie rock variety rather than the sweet soul variety, well, would you believe it, you are in the right place. This is Freshly Squeezed, and as I do every week, I've dug down into the new music scene to pick 3 awesome acts that are the shining lights in terms of emerging artists. I'll contradict that slightly because hardly new, but certainly one to get your ears on if you like a bit of raw edged punk. We're going to speak to Blue Cabs in a bit. A change of pace from that for those who love Bears Den and Bruce Springsteen in the shape of Northeast act Hector Gannet to come. And we head north of the wall to speak to one of the most promising acts on the Glasgow music scene, and there's a fair bit of competition up there at the moment. The Frowns coming on in a bit too. Where should we start? I'll tell you what, let's ease into this week's episode by kicking off with the slightly more chilled than the other 2 work of Hector Gannet, who isn't just a man, but also is sometimes just a man. And that man is Aaron Duff, and he's first up on Freshly Squeezed.
Hey Jim, how's it going?
Very good. So, you're a northeastern musician, but there's definitely a transatlantic feel to your music, which seems at the moment to be a popular trope for the part of the world that you're in, leaning into that kind of Bruce Springsteen vibe. Obviously, Sam Fender instantly springs to mind, but then you've also got artists, we spoke recently to Michael Gallagher, who's kind of gone in that direction a little bit as well. I'm curious, because I'm not aware of a reason, but is there a reason that ties the northeast of England to that kind of Americana?
I suppose maybe it's a working class thing. Backgrounds are quite similar when you think in those terms. I don't think it's really a conscious thing either, to be honest with you. I've only just started to hear that kind of term around my music, Americana, so I don't know whether we're just it's a subconscious thing that we're kind of slipping into. I don't know. It's an interesting thing, but yeah, maybe that connection is something to do with like background, like a shared kind of heritage almost, I suppose, in some ways.
Yeah, I suppose there's that, like, Detroit and the Northeast, heavy industry, that working class backgrounds. You're right, there is a connection there that maybe I hadn't considered before. And the wide open spaces, I guess, as well, to a certain extent.
Yeah, I think landscape has a lot to do with that. I mean, I've always wrote about that, the sort of Northeast coastlines is my patch, and I've always kind of honed in on that artistically. Yeah, it's interesting to see that sort of being taken in different directions as well by different artists, not just from my region. But yeah, you're probably right. The landscape has a lot to do with it, I think.
I think there's a university thesis to be... I'm not the person to do it, but I think there's definitely a university thesis. You mentioned kind of your inspirations from the landscape, and I think as an artist, you're very much rooted in the Northeast and the South Shields, I think it is, area. There's local references.
North Shields, in fact.
North Shields is... I knew I was going to get that wrong. There's a 50% chance, and I knew I was going to get it wrong. So, but there are local references through your music. There's landmarks littering your lyrics. Have you ever had that worry that your music won't translate beyond the local audiences because it is so rooted in where you come from?
Yeah, I mean, I've always been sort of conscious of just writing about what I know, and that's what I know, and all my kind of references of the things that surround me. Interestingly, we've just been out to South by Southwest, actually, and I was really sort of... I mean, we've played in the States before, but this was the first big sort of showcase festival we've done, and I was really sort of conscious of like how that was going to work. Even just the accent, how does that translate? But it's wild when you get into it, like I traveled like 5,000 miles to sing songs about home and people just got it, like people understood. Like it's kind of a universal language, I think. I think when you can tie it into those aspects that a lot of people can take their own reference points on, they can kind of pull their own connection from it. I think that's really important. And it's lush to see that translate. When I started it, I was just kind of doing it for myself, like I wasn't really too concerned with whether people were going to hear it or not. And then, we're kind of going sort of transatlantic and playing in Texas, and people are kind of understanding what we're saying and picking up on it. So that's really exciting,
You've used the phrase "we" there. Obviously, Hector Gannet is you, a solo artist, but then also sometimes you're a band as well. I'm assuming South by Southwest, you're with the band?
We had the full kind of, I mean, it can range, like I can get up and do it on my own. And sometimes it can range in. We've got like a full horn section that gets involved. So sometimes it can be like an 8-piece band, But it's always kind of felt like a bit of a collective. I think that's probably the right term for it, really. I suppose like Mark E. Smith was the perfect example. He said it would be the Fall if it was me and your grandma in the band or whatever, like it's kind of like that. It's kind of like that. Although it is kind of a solo thing at its heart, I've always been very much open to just kind of letting it run and see what happens, and getting people involved who I think should be involved. And the band has kind of evolved that way. Like Jack, who's the drummer, I went right through school with him. We've been like playing in bands since we were like 13, 14, And then the rest of the lads are people I've met through music over the past like 20 years. So it's really organic in that sense, and I'm kind of reluctant to say that it is a solo project because I think that the lads involved have such a big impact on what comes out ultimately. But at the same time, I can, the songs just start sort of on an acoustic guitar or a piano and I can get up and play them like that, that's kind of the beauty of it.
With the songs starting in that way, like this new tune, Seven Signs, it's a really ambitious record. There's big brass band involvement. How do you communicate that? Because I'm assuming you can't sit down and write music for every member of a brass section and you're playing on guitar or piano.
No, I mean, my sort of knowledge or sort of my sort of schooling in music is really limited, like I don't really know what I'm doing most of the time. So whenever I take a song to the band, Cody, the bass player, he's kind of really good at sort of decoding whatever I've done, and we'll have to kind of pull it apart that way. And then it builds into something else, and like I was saying, I'm really sort of keen on the fact that the lads just have this input on it, I'm not too precious. I am to a certain extent, but like I have a kind of vision. But I've kind of learned that it's never going to sound like it does in your head. So let it breathe, and let it be its own thing.
So with this tune, when you wrote it, did you kind of have, right, I want the trumpets going bop, 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 bop over here and I want the tubas doing this. Do you have that vision?
Most of the songs I've lived with for a very long time. And they just kind of evolve through time. Even after they've been recorded, I think a song has its own life, and there's older songs that we'll go into now in a set. And then for whatever reason, I've gone back and listened to the original recording. And I'm like, oh, we don't sound anything like that anymore, and it's just not a conscious thing at all. It's like a totally organic beast, which I just kind of, you have to just let happen. But in terms of this record, it started to pick up that kind of pace when we were rehearsing it. And I was really hearing this like sort of like kind of Dexy's Midnight Runners sort of soul about it, It was one of the first songs that I had written for this record, which is out later on in the year. And this was one of the songs that kind of gave us the kick to get Jason Holcomb involved to write some brass parts. So I've known Jason for a few years now. He's an amazing trombone player, but he also arranges parts for brass sections. So he was like the perfect man for the job, and he's well into it. And I just asked if he wanted to be involved, and he's kind of the sixth member of the band now. So he came with to South by and was playing horns, and it's evolved into this different thing again. It just keeps on moving.
Dexys is a great musical reference for this tune. Actually, the second you said it, it's like, yes, you can hear that connection.
Well, do you know what it is? Well, I'm a massive fan anyway of Kevin Rowland and Dexys, but I hadn't really made that connection until we're in the studio tracking the horns. And me and Alex, who plays the keys, he's kind of the engineer, but we were in the control room the horn section in the live room, and I hadn't heard the parts that Jason had written for it until we got to the point where we were tracking, and it got to like there's a little bridge section into the chorus. And as soon as it started, man, it was like fists in the air, you know. It was like that's Dexy's Midnight Runners. It's like the perfect nod, you know, and it's like I'm all about that. So yeah, you hit the nail on the head with that.
So you mentioned you're working on album 3 at the moment. It's going to come out later this year. We've had 3 tunes to this point in time, with the latest one, Seven Signs, being the latest of those. All the tunes so far, they've been a little bit different. They've kind of gone in different directions. Like when you compare this to the last single, there's a stark difference between the two. What does that mean we can expect from the album when it comes?
I think it's a real, I mean, do you know what it is? I was thinking about this today, actually. It's probably the most personal record that I've put together. And even that's just an organic thing that's come out of nowhere. You know, things just happen in your life and then they inevitably end up in the songs. So there's a lot of really personal themes in there, which is something I've kind of touched on in the past, but it's a lot more open and a lot more sort of honest in that respect. But sonically, I think it goes all over the place. You know, I wouldn't want to put my finger on a kind of reference for the whole album. It's like, I mean, it's going to sound like me singing it. You know what I mean? I can't get away from that. And like you touched on that Americana thing, it's been likened to that in a couple of reviews because we've been playing it live recently. But yeah, it goes all over the shop. And like you say, the last 3 singles, I was kind of setting the stall out in a way, you know. I was thinking, I mean, the single before this one, Stitch in the Fold, it has that New Year's-y feel. So I was really keen on getting it out around that time of year. But it kind of, I suppose these 2 songs, Stitch in the Fold and Seven Signs, are the perfect sort of markers as to the range and the whole album can go from, you know, like the dynamics are, they've always been a big part of the sound of Hector Gannet, but on this album, I think it's really prevalent.
Looking forward to hearing the album when it comes. Really enjoying the new tune, Seven Signs. We're going to feature it on Freshly Squeezed. But Aaron, nice one for coming on.
Amazing. Thanks, Jim.
Gabriel departed in defeat, slumped over Arthur's resting seat, a broken whistle on his wheezing chest, pulling at the feathers underneath his motorcycle vest. The Queen's lament, the missing sign, just another worker waiting to die. When it all ignites, you can't disagree. There's nothing worse than a fire. See, out there and wait for salvation to wash over me. If only I could walk on the water. I throw your arm on my shoulder. That's the way that Carolina sets your mind at ease. I'm going to see the stars at night.
That's Hector Gannet, and he's ace. That's the new tune, Seven Signs, but there is even more new music coming very soon via a brand new album, which is very exciting. No links to that in the podcast description, because it doesn't exist yet, but there are loads of links to more stuff from Hector Gannet there. Next up, we're off to Glasgow, a city that seems to have a bit of a golden ticket for creating awesome new music right now. The Frowns are the recipients of such a ticket, and you'll hear why in a minute. First up, Lloyd is on to speak about the brand new tune, The Angel. How do you, mate?
How you doing?
So, new tune, The Angel, second song to come from the debut EP. To my ears, it's a little bit of a change of pace from what I've heard from you before. I'm probably not familiar with the entire back catalogue, but I'm interested in where it sits in the set currently, as I think this tune has got one of those potentials. It could be that Lighters in the Air encore moment in years to come, but currently, where does it sit when you play live?
Yeah, well, it's one of those ones. I think that's one of the best things about, as you've mentioned, it's a debut EP, and like you have the chance to maybe be so used to bringing out singles, and you know, we want to keep the energy really high. But with this one, we felt like let's take a little bit an experiment. Yeah, just tone it down a little bit. I mean, it's still a bit grungy and things like that. It's one of those ones kind of bring it down a little bit in the middle, have that lighter moment as you mentioned, and then we kind of pick it back up at the end again. When you do the EP, you kind of want it to have its ups, have its downs. You know what I mean? Kind of take you on that kind of path through it. It really did work out as one of my favourite songs on the EP. It's been my favourite.
I guess there is 2 sides to this. One is that it's a time for experimentation. You can kind of see what lands well, and maybe that influences where you're going directionally in the future. But I guess the other side of it is you're a band, you're at the beginning of the journey. And is this you wanting to show off kind of what you can do, stretching those musical muscles a little bit?
I think for any band when they're coming up and they're trying their best to make a bit of a name for themselves, it's the kind of temptation's there to kind of create the most kind of palatable type of music and the real kind of single based stuff that the majority of people enjoy. But I think it's just about kind of trying to stay true to your kind of vision as well with it. And I think we've done a lot of talking about that in the studio. It's just a case of like when things come up, let's just kind of follow our instincts and go for what feels right. Do you know what I mean? And I think in the past, of course, we've kind of tried to keep the tempo really high. I think when we first started playing live, it was like everything was a fast one. But now I think we're kind of at that point where we can experiment a little bit creatively. And that's kind of the essence of that.
You're still a fairly new band. Been releasing music about 3 years or so, I think. But already you've been called the driving force of the new Glasgow indie scene. Is a tag like that equally? Is it daunting as it is complimentary?
A little bit, do you know what I mean? I think, what it's like. I think any words of praise in this industry are more than welcome, I think. But yeah, I think not so much daunting. I think we're just kind of trying to do our own thing. I think, as you said, we're working hard with it, just keeping doing what we're doing. I think one of the most kind of rewarding things about it is, you kind of go from that stage you're playing at maybe 10, 20 people in back rooms, and then you see the crowds get a little bit bigger and you kind of hang about after the show and people do have kind words and people know the music and things like that. And that's really the best thing about it. So yeah, any praise is more than welcome.
On the topic of Glasgow, you've passed the test of any band coming through your part of the world. You've had the sold out headline show at King Tut's, which is a must for anyone that's going to be the next big thing. Tell me what it's like backstage when you're about to step onto that stage, legendary venue. Can you hear the ghosts of bands previous? And does that kind of add to the atmosphere before you step on?
So I think when you walk in King Tut's, you've got like the bar and they've got kind of like a setup where it's like they've got all the names on the stairs on the way up of like the big bands that have played. So you see your Oasis there and things like that, and it does you do kind of take a step back and think, wow, it's sharing the same stage as some like massive bands. But I think even that King Tut's one in particular, the first time we played it, it seemed to happen really fast for us. So we kind of done like a couple of gigs. I think we'd actually done like one gig. We'd done a gig with myself, our drummer, the bass player. So I just kind of doing rhythm and leads. And I think we'd only done maybe one gig with a full band with a lead in the rhythm. And the opportunity came up. And so I think even in that way, I think that was always a little bit better for us. It wasn't that much time to think about it. It wasn't that much prior experience. It was a case of like, let's go up here and give it our best shot. And it's still to this day, it's kind of one of the highlights. Just, it was a great time.
Right, I'm going to ask you to step into the freshly squeezed Mind HMV now. This is a record store in my head where I store all the music I've ever heard. It's a bit like Sherlock Holmes' Mind Palace, but it's better because it's full of music. So just step this way, just mind your head in the door. So your job now is to put your new EP, From Which the Angel Comes, onto the shelves of the Mind HMV. First off, we need to find a genre on it. You can choose where you want it to go. We've got all the standard options, jazz, punk, rock, or you can put it into its own genre of your making. Where do you want to stick it?
I think we just go for that kind of indie rock thing. I think my emphasis has always come from that. I always say Strokes. I think that's the kind of reason I'm in a band, to be honest. And I think we've kind of maybe moved a little bit beyond that with this EP, but I think the kind of groundwork's there for that, the kind of classic indie rock feel, the guitar driven, you know the one.
We'll put it there then. Okay, we'll stick it on the shelves. The next thing is a little bit trickier. So we need to put it between two other records because we don't store stuff alphabetically. That's a bit boring. We store it via inspirations. So if you were going to put the EP, and I've not heard it yet, so I haven't heard the whole thing. I've heard a couple of songs, not heard everything. If I was going to put it on the shelves, I think I'd put it somewhere between something like The Snuts, Juan Belmonte, and Glas Vegas Geraldine. Kind of, that's the kind of place I'd put it. But you mentioned the New York scene and the influence. Yeah, a couple of Glasgow influences. So if you were going to put it somewhere between two records that influence it, where would you be positioning it?
I feel like I'm kind of going a little bit kind of like popular records as opposed to anything obscure. I think I mentioned the Strokes a minute ago. I think anything I've kind of written will always have a little bit of an influence in that as this record, just for like the kind of influence it had on me growing up. Just some of the kind of just the structure of that record, the songs, everything. Like I love it, so I'd have to put that there. And then I've got to say, again, it might seem a little bit boring considering how popular it is just now, but I've had to say Romance with Fontaines DC. I think when that came out last year, 2 years ago, like I think it's the first thing I've heard in so long where I was like, this is just brand new, and it just kind of the way they push it, the way they push that genre as well, kind of influence does to kind of push the boat a little bit. So I'd say those two would suit me.
Anything that sits between Strokes and Fontaines DC sounds all right with me. That sounds pretty good. Lloyd, look forward to hearing the EP when it comes. Look forward to seeing what's next for the Frowns as well. But nice one for your time on Freshly Squeezed. We're going to play the brand new one.
Amazing, mate. Thank you.
It will be a while before the angel settles down. You're the only friendly face that he has ever found. Shout face to a whisper, laughing now, why you're not around. You were chasing dreamers while your dreamers sat around. If a tale were fiction, you would wear the crown, and I'd act like an angel if you only set me down. Why you not around? And promises, they're broken and thrown away, with nothing to say, nothing to say, nothing to say. But you and I might fight the seasons changing from night to day, with nothing to say, nothing to say, nothing to say.
You can see it, can't you? End of a gig, lighters in the air, or phones now, isn't it? People holding their phones up with a torch on, which is weird. Anyway, song does the job in my opinion. Okay, final act on this week's podcast. Not new by any stretch, but still with a brand new tune out. Blue Cabs are on, and Juice from the band joins me. How you doing, mate?
All right, thanks.
So let's talk about where the band are up to at the moment. So you're gearing up for your third EP release as a band, but I don't think that really tells the whole story of where you've come from and how long you've been going, because your first EP came out a decade ago, 2016. Wasn't available on streaming platforms at that point, but it's kind of been published since. But as a band, you've been going together much longer, almost 20 years. I'm going to ask an impossible question. How do you sum up that journey? How do you sum up 20 years of making music with your mates?
Oh, well, mates, I mean, my brother plays drums, my uncle plays the bass, and Jimmy, the guitarist, we've known him forever because we all grew up in the same little village. It's been an interesting journey from ferocious punk. We were in a band first called Kill Disney, quite political and high energy punk kind of music, and that took us all over the place. Actually, we played a lot in London, we got as far as Wales, and then members left years after Kill Disney. A few of us went into different bands, and then we just got back together again as the original four, and it's a bit gentler now. It's still a bit political, it's just not as ferocious, I'd say. Blue Cabs has been going for 10 years, because it's actually about 26 years. I think our first ever gig was Bar Central in Milton Keynes in 1999.
Wow. So a long time together, a long time making music. I imagine when you've been with a group of people that long, it's impossible for your life not to get reflected in music. And you talk about kind of the political side of your messaging, but how much of those sessions when you're sitting down and you're recording together is therapy, is kind of bonding over the ups and downs of life, and which becomes more important than actually just kind of writing, recording, releasing?
Well, yeah, I mean, I think it's great that we get together usually once a week and we all have a little debrief. So I suppose it's good for that. It's good for us to all have a little debrief about our own lives. You know, we've all got families, and that's really important. It's just important to be creative, because I love writing songs, I write the words, and I only started playing the guitar kind of the last 3 or 4 years. I always just sang. But yeah, getting together once a week as a group of mates is great, having a little debrief. And there's been, a fair share of arguments in the early days. But it's a difficult thing to be in a room together for so many years and not fall out.
Your style, as you said, it's quite punky, it's quite edgy, feels like a rallying cry at times as well. At the moment, there is plenty in the world to rally against. Do you find that when you're in turbulent times in terms of the world around you and news, that is when you feel more creative, that is when inspiration flows?
Yeah. I mean, how we write usually is through jamming. Paul will come up with a bass line and we'll just go with it and it'll just turn into a song. Jimmy brings his own guitar riffs in sometimes, we write around that. And because I write the songs, I mean, The songs are about life and what's going on around me, because that's what inspires me, and the sadness of, sometimes it's the sadness of relationships between people. So it's not so much about me. I just feel like I can almost step into other people's shoes sometimes and then write from that point of view, if that makes sense.
With that in mind, then, Stop is the brand new tune. It is from
Yes.
the EP Coping Mechanism, which is going to follow shortly as well. What's the story behind this one?
You see, I never go in with a particular subject. When we're jamming, I'll just sing freestyle. Sometimes none of it makes any sense, just to catch the melody, so I've got it there. And then I usually go away and think about it, because there's usually a few bits in songs that come out naturally, and I can build it around that. So Stop's just about friends who are going down the wrong route in life and trying to give them advice, and them just not listening, and then their lives falling apart, whether they've got kids or families, or whether they get divorced. That's what it's about, really. Just stop it. Look at what you've got and try and sort yourself out.
Where does the inspiration behind the cover art come? Because it's interesting looking at that cover art now, which is a guy holding a petrol pump to his head. And like, in the current world we're in, we're talking slap bang in the middle of the American invasion of Iran, and obviously a world that is grinding its teeth over oil prices. I mean, obviously there's no connection there, because you would have had no idea that was coming.
No. So it's a happy coincidence.
I'm not sure it's a happy coincidence, but
not a happy
coincidence.
coincidence. No, it's definitely not happy. I'm not happy at paying £1.80 for diesel. But my brother often finds really brilliant artwork and just sends it to the group, and we keep hold of them. And then that one just felt perfect for the single and ties in with what's going on around us.
Nice, we'll get on some merch. Juice, lovely to speak to you. Good luck with the EP when it comes. Really enjoying the new tune from Blue Cabs. We're going to get it all freshly squeezed.
Thanks, Jim.
That's Blue Cabs, final act on this week's pod, and there's more from them, more from Hector Gannet, and more from The Frowns in the links via the podcast description. Go in there, get clicking, have a listen. And if that's not enough new music for you, you'll also find links to the freshly squeezed new music playlist there, where every week I add 10 brand new songs that I like this week onto the list. So I'll delete the old 10, put a new 10 up there, so it's always refreshed, always new stuff on there. Every week it comes out on a Friday. Get into Spotify, you'll find it, etc, etc. Links in the bio. That should keep you busy till next week, and we'll have another 3 bands then with fresh tunes on Freshly Squeezed. Cheers for your ears.
The award-winning Freshly Squeezed, a new music podcast, was devised, produced and hosted by Jim Salveson. Sound design and additional production by Anne McGinley. The music, Blue Blazer, is written and produced by Spin Class.